It was a chilly Friday night on campus. The moon was shyly shining in the starry sky, casting shadows over the old buildings. I was at the library trying to focus on studying for the big history exam coming up next week. I was searching for a specific book, and as I flipped through the dusty material, I felt a strange sensation of being watched. I looked around, but the library was almost empty, except for a few scattered students at their tables. That's when I noticed Professor Johnson, my history professor, standing at the end of the aisle, watching me with piercing eyes. His gaze was intense and unsettling, as if he were reading my thoughts. I tried to ignore his presence and keep studying, but something about him made me uncomfortable. His calm and peaceful demeanor contrasted with the unease he caused me. I decided to leave the library and get some fresh air. As I walked through the empty hallways of the building, I heard footsteps echoing behind me. I quickly turned around, but there was no one there. My heart started beating faster. I kept walking, trying to convince myself that I was just imagining things. But the footsteps continued, getting closer and closer as if someone were following my every move. Finally, I reached the library exit and came face to face with Professor Johnson, standing at the end of the hallway. His smile was wide and unsettling, and I could swear I saw a strange gleam in his eyes. "Good evening, my dear," he said, his soft voice echoing through the empty corridor. A shiver ran down my spine as he approached slowly. I tried to step back, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "You've been a very interesting student," he continued, his smile widening even more. "So dedicated to your studies, so determined to uncover the truth behind the facts." I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure. But there was something about the way he spoke that made me nervous. "What do you mean, Professor?" I asked, my voice weaker than I would have liked. He came even closer until our faces were inches apart. His breath was cold and unpleasant. "I know what you're searching for," he whispered, his eyes shining with a frightening intensity. "I know what you desire to find." Before I could respond, he reached out and revealed a large silver medallion. It was engraved with strange symbols and seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "This is an ancient artifact," he said. "They say it has the power to fulfill the deepest desires of anyone." And then he asked, "Do you want to come to my place to discover my desire? I have a fully equipped room to fulfill pleasures." I felt a chill run down my spine as I looked at Professor Johnson, who continued to smile at me with that eerie smile. I managed to respond, "I'm not going anywhere, and I don't want to know about that medallion." I took a step back and quickly left. I realized that beneath the friendly facade, Professor Johnson was a creepy and weird guy. I never looked into the eyes of that stalker again. I've always been kind of skeptical about horror stories, but a roommate convinced me in the most terrifying way possible. It all started when I was assigned to share a room with a guy named Adam. From the moment I first saw him, there was something about him that made me uneasy. He spoke little, but whenever he talked to me, he never looked me in the eyes. It seemed like he was hiding something, and his smile always seemed a bit out of place. At first, I tried to ignore my gut feeling. After all, I needed to focus on my studies, and I couldn't let a bad impression ruin my academic year. But as the weeks went by, I realized there was something off about Adam. At night, while I tried to sleep, I heard strange murmurs coming from his side of the room. They were unsettling whispers, as if he were talking to something I couldn't see. I tried using earplugs, but I could still hear the noises, and it left me feeling paranoid. Then things started getting even weirder. One night I woke up to a chilling cold in the room, even though the heater was on. I saw Adam standing by the window, staring intently at the trees. It was dark outside, and only the moonlight illuminated the leaves. He was whispering something unintelligible, but the air around seemed heavy, as if it was charged with static electricity. I tried to pretend I was asleep, praying that the feeling of fear would pass. I kept listening, trying to understand what he was saying, but I couldn't make it out. I just heard garbled phrases. Suddenly, Adam stopped talking and went back to his bed. In the following days, I began to notice changes in Adam. He seemed paler and more distant, as if he were getting lost in some kind of inner darkness. His conversations became increasingly obscure, full of references to things I didn't understand, and that sent shivers down my spine. Then things took a sinister turn. One night, I woke up to Adam walking towards the window. He passed by my bed, holding something that gleamed in the dim light of the room. It was a knife, shiny and sharp. Before I could say anything, he opened the window and whispered words that gave me goosebumps. He said, "Let's go. Get in and let's get him. He must be sleeping in the room next door." I immediately got up and ran to the door. I opened it and ran towards the exit of the building. It was about 2 in the morning and I couldn't find any security guards. I thought about calling the police, but I left my phone in the room. I circled back and left the building, checking if there was anyone outside the window of my room, and to my surprise, There was someone standing at the window talking to Adam. Until that moment, I thought Adam was sleepwalking or something, but I found out he was plotting something dangerous. I was frozen, unable to move or react. In the midst of this despair, a hand touched my shoulder. I let out a scream, and when I turned around, it was a security guard. He took me to the principal's office, where I reported everything that had happened. The police were called, and a search of the room revealed something even more terrifying. Several knives, pepper spray, and even brass knuckles were found under Adam's bed. They confiscated all the items, including his notebook. They searched for the unknown person who was outside the window, but found no one. Adam disappeared that night, leaving unanswered questions. Since then, I've never been able to trust a roommate again. It all started when we decided to throw a party at that abandoned house on the edge of town. You know, that house everyone avoids, where the trees seem scared to get too close. Yeah, that one. It seemed like the perfect spot for a party, full of mystery and excitement. Me, Laura, Alex, Mia, and Ben were determined to make our night unforgettable. We brought speakers, colorful lights, and of course, some drinks. As soon as we arrived, the house seemed to stare at us with its empty windows and peeling walls. It was like it was inviting us to a dangerous game. We brushed off the shivers and went in. The interior was exactly what we expected, dark, dusty, and full of secrets. The floorboards creaked under our feet as we explored every corner, laughing and taking photos to capture the moment. It was fun, until we found the first sign that we weren't alone. In the middle of the main room, there was a pile of old, dirty clothes, as if someone had been living there. We nervously laughed, trying to ignore the weird feeling it gave us. "Must be just a homeless person looking for shelter," said Alex, trying to calm us down. But then things started to get really spooky. While we were dancing and laughing, we heard a noise coming from the attic. A dragging sound, like something was moving up there. The smiles froze on our faces as we looked at each other, wondering who would have the guts to investigate. Of course, it was me. With the light from my phone in hand, I climbed the creaky stairs, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. The attic was pitch black, and my light barely illuminated the place. That's when I saw something move in the corner, something that shouldn't be there. It was a homeless person, but not like any homeless person I'd seen before. His eyes glowed in the darkness, and his skin looked so pale it almost glowed in the dim light. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sound brave. He just smiled, a smile full of dirty teeth and empty eyes. "This is my home," he murmured, his voice echoing through the attic. "I've been living here for as long as I can remember." I wanted to scream, but my throat felt choked up. I gave up on the idea of confronting him and ran down the stairs, shaking and telling my friends what I saw. But the night was far from over. As we tried to process the frightening encounter, we heard a loud growl coming from outside. We thought it was just a lost dog, but when we looked out the window, we saw something that sent chills down our spines. It was a huge bear with shiny eyes and sharp fangs. It was staring at us as if deciding whether we were easy prey or not. We ran to lock the doors, but we could hear its roars echoing in the darkness, trying to get in. We were trapped in that house, surrounded by a shadowy resident and a hungry bear. Every sound was a terror, every shadow an imminent threat. We could hardly wait for dawn, when we could finally escape from that nightmare.